You might remember a few years ago, there was a call for weirdos and misfits in the system. Well, whatever term you want to use, we do want innovators and disruptors and original thinkers.
The new edition of Whitehall Monitor, the Institute for Government's annual data-led assessment of the civil service, is out now. And this edition, our 12th, is the first to be published under a Labour government. There's no doubt that Keir Starmer's government had a difficult inheritance, with a challenging economic situation and public services under strain. In response, ministers have doubled down on the missions that Labour set out in opposition. The government claims that the missions will bring an entirely new way of governing and working in Whitehall, breaking down departmental silos and embedding more long-term thinking. This would be a welcome change to how government works, but how much has changed in practice? Well, as we find in this year's Whitehall Monitor, 6 months after the election, there remains a lack of detail of what the missions mean and how they work in practice. The spending review, due later this year, will be a make or break moment. Delivering the government's plans will also require change in the way the civil service works. And ministers seem to recognise this, with Starmer and Pat McFadden, Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, calling for reform. But this year's Whitehall Monitor also shows that long-running problems in the civil service persist, and little will change unless these fundamental challenges are addressed. The workforce, for example, is poorly managed, with turnover still too high. In 2023-24, more than 1 in 10 officials either moved departments or left the civil service entirely. Low morale is also still a problem, with 2023 seeing morale fall for the 3rd year in a row, along with official satisfaction with their leadership and how change is managed. Finally, civil service pay is uncompetitive. Despite an uptick last year, pay has declined significantly in real terms since 2010. This has driven grade inflation, as officials are promoted earlier than they otherwise would have been to compensate for the low pay. This in turn makes the civil service workforce even harder to manage. These problems are all familiar, but fixing them requires the government to move beyond vague proposals and make some difficult, fundamental reforms to the civil service. Find out more in this year's Whitehall Monitor.